Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 6. Prahlad instructs his demoniac schoolmates. Text number 10. Ko Varta Trinam Visrijet. Pranebhyo Piya Ipsitaha. Yam Krid Nat Yasubi Preshtas. Taskara Sevako Vanik. Kovarta Trishnam Visrijet. Pranebhyo Piya Ipsitaha. Tam Kridnat Yasubi Preshtais. Taskara Sevakovanik.
Konvarta Trishna Vishrijet. Pranebhyo Piya Ipsitaha. Yam Krinat Yashubhi Preshtais. Taskarach Sivakovanik.
Konvarta Trishna Visrijet. Pranebhyo Piya Ipsitaha. Yashubhi Preshtais. Taskarach Sivakovanik.
Dami. Pranebhyo Piya Ipsitaha. Yam Kranat Yasubi Preshtais. Taskara Sevakovanik. Even today we're allowing more than one lady to chant. Kovarta Krishna Vishrijet. Pranebhyo Piya Ipsitaha. Yam Krinat Yasubi Preshtais. Taskara Sevakovanik. Who, Nu, indeed, Artha Trishnam, a strong desire to acquire money. Visrijet, can give up. Pranebhya, then life. Api, indeed. Ya, which. Ipsitha, more desired. Yam, which. Krinati, tries to acquire. Asubi, with one's own life. Preshtai, very dear. Taskara, a thief. Sevaka, professional servant. Vanik, a merchant. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Money is so dear that one conceives of money as being sweeter than honey. Have you ever tried to eat honey? Money? Put it in our tea every night. Therefore, one can give up the desire to accumulate money. Therefore, who can give up the desire to accumulate money, especially in household life? Thieves, professional servants, soldiers, and merchants try to acquire money even by risking their very dear lives. Purport. How money can be dearer than life is indicated in this verse. Thieves may enter the house of a rich man to steal money at the risk of their lives. Because of trespassing, they may be killed by guns or attacked by watchdogs, but still they try to commit burglary. Why do they risk their lives? Only to get some money. Similarly, a professional soldier is recruited into the army and he accepts such service for the risk of dying on the battlefield, only for the sake of money. In the same way, merchants go from one country to another on boats at the risk of their lives. Or they dive into the water of the sea to collect pearls and valuable gems. Thus it is practically proved, and everyone will admit, that money is sweeter than honey. One may risk everything to acquire money, and this is especially true of rich men who are too attached to household life. Formerly, of course, the members of the higher caste, the brahmanas, kshatriyas, and vaishyas, everyone but the shudras were trained in the Gurukul to adhere to a life of renunciation and sense control by practicing brahmacharya and mystic yoga. Went to Gurukul, you learn mystic yoga. Walk on water and Prapti City, pick everyone's pocket. I wonder if with your mystic power, if you travel one place to another, you have to wear a mask. Then they were allowed to enter household life. There have consequently been many instances in which great kings and emperors have given up household life. Although they're extremely opulent and were masters of kingdoms, they could give up all their possessions because they were trained as early as brahmacharis. Prahlad Maharaj's advice is therefore very appropriate. Ko maracharat pragyo dharman bhagavataniha durlabam manusham janma tadapyadruvam artadam. One who is sufficiently intelligent should use the human form of body from the very beginning of life. In other words, from the tender age of childhood, to practice the activities of devotional service, giving up other engagements. The human body is most rarely achieved, and although temporary like other bodies, it is meaningful because in human life one can perform devotional service. Even a slight amount of sincere devotional service can give one complete perfection. Human society should take advantage of this instruction. Kon varta trishnam visrijat pranebhyo pi ya ipsitaha yam krid nat yasubi preshtais taskara sevakovanik. Money is so dear that one conceives of money as being sweeter than honey. Therefore, who can give up the desire to accumulate money, especially in household life? Thieves, professional servants, soldiers, and merchants try to acquire money even by risking their very dear lives. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Vacharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatyade Satarne. The other word used is artha. Artha means something that has some value. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Chatura vida vidante mam janasukita arjuna artha jignasya artharati gyani charbharatar shiva. So different people have different desires. Some people are artists. A with long A, artha, which means they're suffering. So if one is suffering, for instance, if you're, at least when I used to go to the dentist, that the dentist, to the children, usually they give a lollipop at the end. You know what a lollipop is? Because they didn't use Novocaine back then. They didn't use any anesthesia. So going to the dentist, could you imagine go to the dentist? And then back then they find cavities in your mouth that weren't there. You go to the dentist and you would have like 10 cavities. And you just went yesterday. Because they didn't have x-rays either so much. They just find cavities everywhere. If you didn't clean your teeth, they'd drill the food out. Didn't brush your teeth. In any case, and then afterwards, because it was the most unpleasant experience you can imagine. The last place in the world, two places you don't want to go to, a torture chamber and the dentist. Torture chamber is probably better than a dentist. And at the end, they give you a lollipop, so you feel good. Oh, okay, it wasn't so bad, was it? Besides that, if they give you a lollipop, it rot your teeth and they get more work. So similarly, artha is those who are suffering. That's all they want to do, is relieve their suffering. They have no other thing in mind. In South America, someone was driving on a motorcycle and he hit into a tree, and the branch of the tree went right through him. And they went to the doctor, but the doctors wouldn't fix him because he didn't have insurance. They wouldn't take the branch out. But the only thing in his life that he was meditating at that particular time was get the branch out. So it took, after some elaborate arrangements, he had to get money for America. And then when they got the money, then they took the branch out. Don't go to Guatemala or ride a motorcycle. It's dangerous. So when you're artha, when you're suffering, the only thing you can meditate on is how to get rid of your suffering. And then if you're not suffering, what's the next thing you want to do is enjoy. Isn't that right? Either we're suffering and trying to get free of our suffering, or we're trying to enjoy. So this is called artha arthis, those who are trying to enjoy. But as Prabhupada said, people are so foolish nowadays, they don't even know it's enjoyable. They try to enjoy, but they don't know it was actually enjoyable, and therefore most of the time they just waste their time. It's kind of like, there's a place in America called Coney Island. Did you ever hear of Coney Island? Every place in America is famous. Coney Island. So every week, my parents, my sister, myself, we go to Coney Island. And in Coney Island, they used to make this, what's called cotton candy. I guess they have that here too. You've heard of cotton candy? It's this big mass of candy. You think, my God, I need that. I really want that. I can't live without it. That's where real happiness is. Merge into the cotton candy. And you get it, and it's all air. 2 tablespoons of sugar, and the rest of it is air, and you're eating air. Where is it? There's so much of it. It all kind of dissolved into nothingness. So everyone is hankering for that happiness and looking around, but it's not there because people don't know where it is. As Trivika Maharaj is talking to Srila Prabhupada when they were living at Tittenhurst Tittenhurst was the home of John Lennon and Yoko. And the devotees were there because they were helping John Lennon fix up his house. And they didn't have a place to stay because the devotees were fixing up Bury Place. So one day Prabhupada said to, Trivika Maharaj said to Prabhupada, that Prabhupada, isn't it amazing that John Lennon, he's worth 300 million pounds. And pounds at that time were much heavier than they are now. Pounds have become quite light. So Prabhupada said, but what's the value of all this money? He said he doesn't know how to use it. You have all this money, you don't know how to use it, then you'll just misuse it. And of course he was misusing it in so many different ways. Even you're a billionaire, but if you don't know how to eat properly, then you're going to wind up eating some dead animal. The devotees have no money, practically speaking, but they're eating better than a billionaire is. So what's the value of the money if you don't know how to eat? And of course, if the devotees learn how to chew, they'd be in ecstasy. So even when we have the best food, still we have things to learn, like how to chew, how to move our teeth up and down, because we were never taught. We were taught there's only one direction. You put it in, it slides down. And you hope it slides out eventually. But that's not the way things work. You have to learn. You have to have some knowledge. Otherwise, you don't know what to eat, or even how to eat, or when to eat. The materialists, if you go on an airplane, which is pretty rare nowadays, people used to fly in airplanes. But I usually, when I was traveling internationally, they'd serve breakfast and then lunch and a snack in between and another meal. You think, I wouldn't eat anything. I'd only drink their water, and they'd be worried, what's wrong with you? Are you all right? No, I brought my own. What is it? Puffed rice? My God, what's wrong with you? Are you sick? And you watch the material, people on the plane, and they eat, this meal, and then an hour or 2 hours later, they eat another meal. And then they eat another meal. Where is it going to fit? Where does it go? I mean, if I ate, anything that they eat, I'd be completely sick by the time I left the airport. But they don't know if they're sick or not. They're so intoxicated by the material energy, they can't feel anything anymore. So real thing is eating. That's the basic principle of happiness. Just like if we have a festival, and then at the end of the festival, there's chanting, there's dancing, there's even philosophy, and then we say, "Oh, I'm sorry, no prasad today." They probably tear the temple down. Give me back my money. So basically speaking, real happiness comes from eating nicely. If you can't eat nicely, you can't do anything else. But they don't know how to do that. So they're so-called artha. It's not artha. Nite vidu swartha gatim hi Vishnu. Darasayaye barhya artha manina. So their artha is actually very little. Their gain, because they don't know what's actually will gratify their senses. That proper food, and it doesn't cost that much. Previously, Prabhupada said when he was in New York, one of the mothers of one of his disciples came to him and said, Prabhupada asked her, "When are you going to get your son married?" And the lady said, "Oh, when he can afford it." And Prabhupada was surprised, when he can afford it. Because in India, Even the poorest person has like 8 children. Here, no one even thinks about having 8 children. They wouldn't know where to put them. Previously, they used to have more children now, because now having children is a very expensive hobby. Because they're going to grow up, they're going to become, as in America they call them juvenile delinquents. They're going to spend their lives, playing video games and taking intoxication, running after something. And when they grow up, they'll put, they'll put so the parents reach 50, they'll put them in an old age home, so they don't have to look at them anymore. So having children is just like some game you have, expensive hobby you have for a few years, and then whatever. So what to speak of having one of them? If you have 2 of them, it's like financial burden. You have to take out a loan, or you got to sell one of the kids. And then people do that, actually. But previously, life was simple. You didn't have to, buy every kid 15 different video games. And there are mobile PlayStations. And every kid has to have his own, or else there's a big fight that goes on. It was simple. The child would grow up. There wasn't any, they'd be delivered at home. You didn't have to spend 30,000 euros on the delivery. And food was there. You go out and pick the food, or you harvest the food. Everything was available. That's all you needed. You made your own house. You didn't have to pay rent or mortgage. And Gurukul, you didn't have to, for expensive education. By the time you're done, you have to spend the rest of your life paying off your loan. And you get a PhD, no one will hire you because you're overeducated. So it wasn't there. It was more or less like now, if you become a bird, birds don't have to take out loans for anything. There's no financial burden for a bird. He's not anxiety, sitting up at night, how can I pay for this nest? There's 5 eggs in the nest. I don't think I can afford this. Maybe I should throw one of the eggs out. No, there's no problem for the bird. So previously there was no problem. People could have as many children as they wanted, and it wasn't a big financial burden. And the children would grow up, and they'd actually be valuable. They could actually help out in the planting and the harvesting of the food. They'd actually be an asset. They wouldn't be, a debt that you had to pay off. And people actually valued the children because they were an asset. They could do something valuable. And when they grow up and the parents grow older, they actually take care of their parents. Because they knew, if I don't take care of my parents, when I have children and they grow up and they see I haven't taken care of my parents, they're not going to take care of me either. So there was actually something called a civilization, which they only write about in books nowadays. No one believes it. They relegate it to the fairy tales. Myth. This is a myth. It used to be actually family life. But Artha, people knew what Artha was, and they didn't have to worry so much about it. So therefore, as it says here, that sometimes, under rare circumstances, professional soldiers or a merchant or a thief, they risk their very dear lives to get some money. But generally, people didn't have to do that. Everything was pretty much available, and there wasn't a problem. But here, Prahlad Maharaj is mentioning it. So obviously, there must have been some people in society who were mentally unfit or something, couldn't actually get what was valuable, which was not, they were trying to get a great amount of wealth. Most people didn't care about that. Because even he had all this wealth, like Yudhisthira Maharaj. Do you know where Yudhisthira Maharaj slept at night? He slept in the cow barn. So he's the emperor of the whole world, but to get a little peace, he slept with the cows. If you sleep with cows, you can get in a very good sleep. Cows, did you ever smell a cow?
Yes.
Did you ever smell a cow? Yeah. So cows, actually, if you smell the cows, then you'll actually become more peaceful. So if you want to get a good night's sleep, then sleep with the cows. Don't sleep next to the cow because you may roll over. That would be very unfortunate. You get a better sleep than you were bargaining for. But he used to sleep in the cow barn somewhere because it was very peaceful. He didn't have to sleep in a big palace with so many different rooms in order to get a good night's sleep or in a very so-called comfortable bed. But just by sleeping in the cows, he'd sleep very peacefully. So that would be taken care of. Very nice food. There's no question of increasing the so-called enjoyment by eating different varieties of food. If you have a feast, like sometimes they have these big feasts, they have like 108 preparations for a big holiday. And after you think, well, now I'm really going to enjoy 108 preparations. I'm going to enjoy like Krishna. He only glanced at them. I'm going to eat them. But after the fifth preparation, you can't tell anything apart anymore. It all tastes the same. The only thing driving one is this desire to enjoy. You can't do it. And the gulab tastes the same as the malpur and the sweet ball. They all taste the same after some time. You can't taste anything. So there's only so much amount of enjoyment one can actually get. And therefore, life was peaceful. And on the other hand, one would actually look for something higher. After some time, one realized that this is happiness, but there must be more happiness somewhere. So one would take to Krishna consciousness. Because one was trained in brahmachari life, that real happiness is in consciousness. And indeed, in the relationship as we can see in the relationship between Sudama and Krishna. If you read the Krishna book, you'll find out Sudama was extremely poor. He was a Brahmin, because Brahmins are supposed to be poor. But he had a good friend in Gurukul. His name was Krishna. And they lived a very simple life. So the Krishna went there, and he had, all his servants come there, and Mother Jasoda came there too, and cooked his lunch for him. No, he went there, or Devaki or Rohini came there and cooked lunch. No, they were living in the Gurukul, and they ate rather simply. They slept rather simply, and their service was rather simple. Besides their learning process of the 64 arts that they learned every day, their life was quite simple. But they made friendships with each other. They were friends of Sandipani Muni, Brahmachari Guru Kule, Vasandanta Guru Ritam. They had a very nice relationship with their teacher. And they had a friendship with each other. So much so that when Sudama came to see Krishna, Krishna didn't think, who's this guy? He looks familiar. I can remember his face. Maybe I saw him at Gurukul somewhere. I can't remember, but he looks pretty bad now. No, immediately Krishna rushed out and greeted Sudama and put him on his own bedstead. And Rukmini fanned personally Sudama because they were very dear friends. So although they didn't have material opulence, as a matter of fact, Krishna was coming as the son of a Kshatriya, very wealthy, opulent position, and Sudama was a very poor Brahmin. But they lived together, both of them, in the Gurukul. And they enjoyed friendship, they enjoyed higher consciousness, and that didn't break. Even when Krishna became one of the kings of Dwarka, still he remembered his very dear friend, Sudama, because that was what was valuable. As you see the movies, nowadays. I don't advise you see the movies. It's not a command that you see the movies nowadays. But, the movies is, in the space of 15 minutes, 15 different people got killed. If that's that's in the comedies. And if you watch the old movies, they're, like Indian old movies, no one gets killed in some of the movies. That's why, no one replays those movies. They're considered boring. There's only relationships. Even in the Mahabharata, in a half an hour, two people are just talking to each other. People can't understand what's wrong with these producers. What were they doing? Who made this script, Took me 5 minutes and I fell asleep. Because they have no value, they don't value what's actually valuable. Relationships. One time I went to see a movie. This is in 1960 something. It was made by Andy Warhol. You've heard of Andy Warhol?
Yes. Painter.
What's that?
He was an artist.
Yeah, an artist also. And he also made movies. He made this movie called The Empire State Building. And it was a 3-hour movie of just nothing went on except he was just filming the Empire State Building. And unless you're very intoxicated, which I wasn't at the time, I couldn't understand what's going on here. Did I actually pay for this thing? I was thinking, am I crazy? Everyone else is crazy. So this is where people are at. That's where they're at then when they're half sane. Now they think, oh, this is, now they realize that this is ridiculous. Now they just go out and do something valuable, like kill people, torture people, whatever. All right. Previously, for instance, the heroes were all good people. Now the heroes are the villains. They've come so much into the mode of ignorance that previously the people who were the villains, they become the heroes. The heroes are now the villains. Or the heroes are worse than the villains. So there's all distortion of consciousness, not knowing what is actually valuable and what's not valuable. Therefore, taking things that are up which are not valuable, people are actually getting less and less and hankering for more and more. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
I have one more.
Okay.
And it's just in the purple Prabhupada said that just a little advancement in devotional service can give for all perfection. Or what does he mean?
Sincere, Prabhupada.
Oh, sincere. Sorry.
He said sincere. I wasn't going to mention that. I noted that, but I thought if I say something. Even a slight amount of sincere devotional service. Then we have to define what sincere is. Not so easy to be sincere. Sincere, I mean, if I'm actually sincere, then I follow everything. As much as I follow, then I'm actually sincere. None of us are born sincere. That's something that has to be developed. All right, thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande.